There is a moment in every person's life when they realize they've given too much access to the wrong people. It's not always because those people were malicious. It's often because they were careless. They took your availability for granted. They interpreted your kindness as weakness. They relied on your constant presence, your forgiveness, your understanding, without ever considering the cost. And eventually, something inside you shifts, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Stoicism teaches us to guard our peace the same way we guard our homes. Not everyone deserves a key. Not everyone deserves entrance. And certainly, not everyone should have access to the most intimate parts of your mind. Your emotions, your time. When you begin cutting access, quietly, respectfully, but firmly, you begin to rediscover something sacred, your self-worth. You see, the world trains us to believe that in order to be respected, we must always be available, always explain, always fix. But the Stoic knows the truth. The more freely you give access, the more people forget its value. It's only when you withdraw, when you become less reachable, less explainable, less reactive, that people begin to pause, to reflect, to wonder. That pause, that's where respect begins. They don't respect your boundaries when you talk about them. They respect them when you enforce them. Not with rage, not with ultimatums, but with absence. When your presence was once predictable, but now it's rare. When your responses were immediate, but now they're delayed or non-existent. When your energy was once offered freely, but now it's protected by discernment. People start respecting you not because you shouted louder, but because your silence forced them to confront their own noise. That is the power of cutting access. It's a strange reversal. When you were available, they ignored your worth. When you were present, they questioned your value. But now that you're gone, now that you've become selective, suddenly, they notice. Suddenly, your silence echoes louder than all your previous words combined. Suddenly, they remember how your presence felt. And that's when you learn. Sometimes, the only way to be respected is to walk away. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about playing games. It's about honoring your energy. The Stoics didn't detach to punish others. They detached to protect their peace. They knew that clinging to what drains you is the surest path to self-destruction. That constantly explaining yourself is a form of spiritual exhaustion. And that your life becomes lighter the moment you stop negotiating your value. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." The same applies to self-worth. Don't explain your worth, embody it. Stop chasing people who don't see it. Stop engaging in conversations where your dignity is under question. Stop showing up in places where your energy is exploited. Respect begins with you. Cutting access doesn't mean you become cold or bitter. It means you become selective. It means you finally understand that not everyone deserves front row seats to your life. It means you stop lowering your standards to keep people comfortable. Because the truth is, the more you tolerate disrespect, the more you teach people how to treat you. And the longer you stay where you're not valued, the more you forget your own value. You owe it to yourself to stop being available to those who only come around when they need something. You owe it to yourself to stop explaining to those who've already decided not to understand. And you owe it to yourself to stop watering relationships that only leave you dry. This shift is powerful, but it's quiet. There are no declarations, no dramatic exits, just a gradual withdrawal, fewer responses, less emotional investment, no more over-explaining, no more trying to prove your worth, because you've realized that your time, your presence, your peace are sacred. And what happens next is always the same. People start respecting you. They notice you're not chasing anymore, that your energy isn't up for grabs, that you're no longer the easy, forgiving, always available version of yourself. And in that space, some people will begin to change, not because you forced them, but because your absence forced them to grow. Others, of course, will fall away. Let them. Your job is not to convince people of your value. Your job is to live in alignment with that value, and allow those who resonate to remain, and those who don't, to exit. The Stoic doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't plead for respect. He stands, silently and firmly, in his truth, and in that stillness, he becomes powerful, unshakable. When you stop explaining, you start observing. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. And when you stop giving access, you start regaining control. People can only manipulate what they can reach. They can only drain what they can touch. But when your peace becomes inaccessible to drama, when your attention is no longer given to chaos, you become immune to their gains. This is why cutting access is not about them. It's about you. It's a return to self-respect, to discipline, to discernment. You're no longer available for guilt trips, for emotional outbursts, for people who only remember you when they need something. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer explaining every move. You are simply gone from the places that once exploited you. And that absence? It's deafening. Because people remember consistency. They remember presence. And when that presence vanishes, they begin to notice all the value they ignored. The irony of life is this: your availability once made you invisible, but now your absence makes you unforgettable. Stoic wisdom reminds us that boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. And you hold the key. You decide who gets access, who gets proximity, who gets energy. You no longer give these things out of obligation or fear or habit. You give them by choice, by clarity, by alignment with your values. So if they ask why you've become distant, tell them nothing. Let your silence be the answer. If they ask why you don't explain anymore, smile. You're no longer in the business of over-explaining. You've outgrown that version of yourself. Because when you cut access, you make a declaration, not to them, but to yourself, that you will never again beg to be seen. That you will never again exhaust yourself to maintain connections that are not mutual. That you will never again dilute your worth to be accepted. And as this clarity grows, so does your power. You walk differently. You speak with conviction. You stop entertaining disrespect. You stop tolerating inconsistency. And that energy is magnetic. Suddenly, people don't just notice you, they respect you. Because they can feel the shift. They can feel your boundary. They can feel your self-worth radiating in your calm, your silence, your presence. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it, and they adjust. Some step up, some step out, and that's exactly how it's meant to be. You don't lose people when you set boundaries. You lose people who were only there because you had none. You don't lose love when you value yourself. You lose attachment disguised as love. And what remains? The real, the respectful, the reciprocal. So walk away when you must. Withdraw when you must. Go silent when needed. Not to punish, not to manipulate, but to protect the peace you fought so hard to build. Because when you cut access, they start respecting you. Not always immediately, but eventually. And most importantly, you start respecting you. That's the comeback Stoicism teaches. Not the one with noise and rage, but the one with boundaries, with stillness, and with an unwavering sense of worth that no one else is allowed to define.